Salem's deceleration burn was almost complete. Arnov Station barely 1,000 kilometers away now. His own engine burn was making scans difficult, but it was almost finished now. He'd planned to drift the last few kilometers in so he could get a good look. Arnov Station had gone dark over a month ago, but this deep into the system, it was far away from everything when it stopped transmitting. Salem, and likely a host of other salvagers, would have started their approach as soon as it was detected. He was just hoping to be the first one there. Cutting his engines at 50 kilometers, Salem turned around, casting his sensors over the station. Arnov Station wasn't very large, home to just a few hundred people, mostly bear and cat uplifts, but there were some humans and anima, but he could see no signs of life. The windows dark and reactor cold, the whole station was silent. In the last 100 meters of approach, Salem fired his thrusters to come to a stop, before starting a slow orbit of the station. Not exactly an orbit. The mass of the station was too low to provide any sense of gravity. Instead, it was a circular and slow course around the station. Arnov was a rotating ring, with spokes to the central docking hub. It was still spinning, producing a little over 8 meters a second. Salem noted that there seemed to be no sign of damage on it, though through the glassy domes of the ring, he could see the corpses of trees and frozen water. The entire station was cold, far too cold for its inhabitants. There was no debris, so Salem angled toward the docking hub, stretching his legs and toes as he approached, setting his feet against the metal surface and magnetizing to the hull. Salem half climbed across the plating to the main docking hangars. They were all closed, but without power, they would be easy to force open. Soon enough, Salem was entering a hangar, one of 8 on the station. It was a smaller one, designed for spacefarers like himself to use. The hangar was tidy and clean, as well as decompressed. Once the hangar was sealed, Salem headed for the interior door, which was also closed. It was easy to force open, but there was no rush of air from beyond, no pressure at all. The entire hub, at least, must be decompressed, likely the entire station. Beyond the doorway was an access corridor, connecting the hangars and elevators of the station. Of course, none of the elevators would be working, so he forced another door and began climbing down the shaft. Each spoke of the station was an elevator shaft, running from the docking hub to the ring below, so as Salem descended down the shaft, the sense of gravity grew. Not much at first, but soon his mass was turning to weight. Salem wasn't huge, but he weighed over a ton at 10 meters a second, so he would be lighter here. Not much, but a little. The elevator was at the bottom of the shaft, so Salem forced open the entrance above it, 1 floor up, opening out to the residential deck of the ring. Several bodies were scattered along the wide corridor, gently glistening with frost. Most were bears, though a few anima and humans were among them, even the odd cat. But an anima, like Salem, should have been able to survive decompression. Worse still, 2 cats were in sealed suits. The helmets still pressurized. They were dead, just like everyone else. The only difference being that the cats had the opportunity to decompose. Salem moved quickly down the hall, careful to avoid the bodies scattered along it, soon reaching an access hatch to the floors above and below. The map he had of the station showed that the main control room was on the lowest deck, so he opened the hatch, clambering down the ladder, not as easy for him as it would be for a humanoid form. The bottom deck was mainly hydroponics, which surrounded him as he reached the floor. The plants, all starved of water and air, were as dead as the people, though there were less of them here, just a handful of staff, mainly cats and humans, as dead as the rest, laying among their crops, frozen together. Hydroponics covered half the lowest deck, able to produce food for more than double the station's population. allowing Arnov to resupply passing ships. Though it was all useless now, the stiff bodies of the frozen plants cracking under the heat of Salem's reactor as he passed the endless shelves. The maintenance area was ahead, so he focused on his destination. The corpses of so many was a new experience for Salem. He'd seen a human die once, their suit compromised as they drifted through the dust of Jupiter's outermost rings. But that body was badly damaged. The crew and citizens of Arnov were perfect. None were injured, at least not that he noticed, as he tried to keep his eyes on the door ahead. Forcing his way into the maintenance area, Salem was pleased to see an empty corridor, free of bodies and clean, much like the hangar decks, and indeed the entire station, were it not for the death that seemed to blanket every corner of it. Salem's lamps were illuminating the way ahead. The light colours and soft, almost organic shaping of the passage allowed his lights to penetrate the dark well. If anyone was still alive, they would surely notice him. Following coloured lines, he soon found the entrance to main control. A single cat uplift was sat against the door, facing directly towards Salem. His frozen eyes glistened in the light, almost making him seem alive. His body was frozen to the floor and door, making it difficult to avoid disturbing him. Using his laser cutter, Salem warmed the frost around the cat, gently loosening it so he could move him, without rending his body in two. It took almost 20 minutes, but the body was finally free, allowing him to carefully handle the remains, moving them to the side of the door. The control room door was a bulkhead, closed but without any power. Its locks would be on. Forcing it was impossible. Having no other choice, Salem opened a maintenance panel, exposing a data port. Extending a cable from his chest, Salem connected to the system, sharing some power and sending in hacking programs. The security system was designed to keep fire and decompressions out, not salvagers. So it soon swept aside, allowing him to disengage the locks and lift the half-ton door. No air escaped as the door moved, indicating that decompression did not kill everyone. The control room should still have pressure in that case. The only way this room could be decompressed was if the atmosphere systems were compromised in some way. Several bodies littered the control room, many of them bears. Their large, furry bodies slumped in chairs or over consoles. Even here, the power was out, so Salem performed a quick weld on the door, ensuring it would not close behind him. He didn't want to be trapped in here. This station was already like a tomb. He did not wish to be buried alive in it. The main computer core could be reached from here, so hastening across the room, Salem pushed open the door and entered the core. There were no bodies here, just a series of server stacks, each reaching from floor to ceiling. They were some 5 meters high, larger individually than Salem. Arranged in 3 rows, they appeared reminiscent of Roman columns, surrounding the central access terminals. Salem moved to the center and began looking for the black box. Housed in the foot of the terminals, it was still there, making him the first to arrive. Disengaging the mechanical lock, the black box slid easily from its housing. The first sign of power, its lights were on, indicating that it was still intact. The box had a serial number on the side. This is what he needed to claim this frozen tomb. Salem prepared his transmission, but shielding on the bottom deck prevented it from being heard here, so Salem headed out of the server and control room, making his way toward the nearest route up. The residential decks were not shielded, and the journey was not long, soon allowing him to transmit the serial code along with his own, claiming their salvage and forcing others to change course. Heading next for the reactor room, Salem felt pleased at his haul, though a part of his AI mind was definitely disturbed by the graveyard he had claimed. The reactor, like everything else, was off. Even its consoles were dead, Plugging into the system and pumping a bit of power in, Salem was able to get the computers to wake. They did not boot into the interface, instead sitting at a CMOS warning, the data blanked, possibly as a security measure. The only place he could get the software was in his arms, the black box containing backups of everything, so he extended a second cable, connecting into it. The swirls of light and sparkles tore his surroundings down, reshaping them into the sweetest patterns, flowing inexorably to the edges of his mind. He could hear music from the farthest reaches of his imagination, rolling through the colors and lights, a seemingly endless dance of experience. Salem laughed and smiled into the ever madder swirls of his own mind.